So if we're talking about the future of World of Warcraft's story, let me be clear, I don't know how Shadowlands is going to play out. I have no idea. At this point, my base guess is that Elune is a massive secret that is going to be extremely important at some point down the line. I don't know exactly when, but Elune is going to be... she's going to be instrumental to the telling of this tale. There's a lot of things that's now being sort of starting to make sense to me the more we learn now. So, for example, do you guys remember Spires of Ascension? How many people have done Spires of Ascension or have done it enough times to remember the voice lines in Spire of Ascension from Devos? Devos explains to the Arbiter that the Arbiter is corrupt and short-sighted, right? She will replace the Arbiter and then she will rebuild the Kyrian. But then Devos goes even further and she says, as I listened to the jailer and I learned about the great injustice you visited upon him. Now, at the time, we could sort of guess to what this great injustice could have been, but there was no real way of knowing, right? We just sort of took guesses as to what this injustice may or may not be. We now know. Now, the jailer, we could argue, is lying, and he's sort of just making shit up. But the better question, the more speculation-friendly question is, what if he isn't lying? The jailer himself, right, or at least they themselves, the Eternal Ones, tell us that they banished him because he sought forbidden knowledge. That's why they banished him to the Maw. To my mind, I don't see that as a banishable offense. To banish your own brother, who's simply asking questions, who's simply going, wait a second, what if all of this is bullshit? What if our roles in the universe is bullshit? To be banished for that. Now, of course, yes, he did try to take the keys through violence, but again, we get to what he's doing now. He had the opportunity to kill Carestia the Firstborn. He could have killed the Arbiter. Or the Archon, not the Arbiter, the Archon. Why didn't he? He could have killed the Primus. He didn't. He had the opportunity to kill the Winter Queen, and yet he didn't. So, yes, he wants the keys, and yes, he's using violence, but still he does not strike down his own brothers and sisters. He doesn't kill them. He simply claims the keys. Now, the question becomes, the keys to what? What is the keys that he's after? This is where we get to End Time. How many of you remember the End Time dungeon? How many of you did the End Time dungeon? Alright, you guys realize that every single thing that was predicted in the End Time literally happened. Every single person read the End Time wrong. The End Time, from day one, from the very beginning, shows Deathwing defeated. Deathwing is dead. And after Deathwing's death, a bunch of things transpire. A bunch of things happen. You have Jaina going sort of apeshit and losing her fucking mind. You have Tyrande losing her mind and going complete Night Warrior. You have Sylvanas, right? Now, with Sylvanas, this is actually very interesting because has Sylvanas actually happened yet? Because according to the dungeon journal for Sylvanas in the End Time, now I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember off the top of my head, but according to the dungeon journal for Sylvanas, it's a fragment of hatred. She's restless. And because of this restlessness, she wishes to destroy all life. The End Time dungeon shows that Deathwing is defeated. It then shows how Jaina, Tyrande, and Sylvanas becomes corrupted and lose themselves. And then after all of those are saved, because we save Jaina, we save Tyrande, and we ultimately save Sylvanas, right? Only then do we get the Morazon Nosdormo. that starts to happen. Only then do we usher in the age of the Twilight Dragonflight, the Infinite Dragonflight. It's only then when the prophecy comes into fruition. Remember, there is a prophecy, right? We've been warned about this for quite some time. The old gods warned us about this, and I have a video that is going out Friday about the old gods' warnings, but the old gods warned us about all of this. They made it very clear that we alone can stop you, right? There's no one else that can stop this. We are the only ones that can save you from this fate. The question becomes, what fate? What is Zuval actually after? What is he trying to unlock? Oh, there we go. Venetia, thank you very much. Spawned from shattered timeways and cloistered within the Ruby Dragonshire, a maddened fragment of the Forsaken's leader, Sylvanas Windrunner, waits restlessly. Having lost everything and unable to find peace, this tormented echo aches for a chance to unleash her dark fury at anything still living within these barren, time-twisted wastes. That is Sylvanas, right? That is the vision of Sylvanas. Now, we already have the sort of evidence, and I put that in massive quotation marks, the evidence that Blizzard is sort of alluding to at the minute, where Sylvanas is also fragmented, where her soul is fragmented. She has two parts, right? So at the end of all of this is the unleashing of the Hour of Twilight. The Hour of Twilight was never Deathwing's to bring. Just by the way, Deathwing was not the one who would bring the Hour of Twilight. In order for the Hour of Twilight to happen, Deathwing had to die. Because without Deathwing's death, the Hour of Twilight could never happen. End Time is all about the Hour of Twilight. It's all about bringing the Infinite Dragonflight into existence. It's all about opening the doorway. That's what the End Time is all about. We're uncovering more and more evidence. I'm not yet ready to make a video on this, but I will sort of mention it here. We're uncovering more and more evidence that Zuval was at one point the master of the Pantheon of Death. He at one point did rule the Shadowlands. More and more evidence shows this. There's also evidence now that shows that Zuval himself was the very first leader of Revendreth. If you read the Sinstones in Revendreth, it makes it very clear that Zuval was the original creator of Revendreth. The very thing that controlled the flow of anima, that was the original purpose of Revendreth, was to control anima, the flow thereof, the sort of, shall we say, the supply lines of the Shadowlands is Revendreth. It's the base, the factory of the Shadowlands, if you will. It's how anima is pushed from one side to the other. So this is where things get rather interesting. The Harvester of Wrath, right, which is one of the... She, according to Prince Ranathal, was also created in the Shadowlands. They weren't souls who once existed. The biggest problem here, right, the biggest problem here is that the Harvester of Wrath worships Elune. Why? Currently, all that evidence that points to Zuval being the original creator of the Shadowlands or of Revendreth, it actually, how do we put this? It enforces the idea that Zuval was the leader of the Eternal Ones, much like Aman'Thul is the leader of the Pantheon of Order, or Pantheon of Life, depending on how you want to look at it, right? Aman'Thul is the leader. He makes the decisions based on, based on the vision or the purpose that he follows. The problem is that if you read the Sinstones from Revendreth, only one character or NPC or entity comes out as the possible original Lord of Dread. However, this was before Revendreth became the Land of Dread. Think about everything that Revendreth stands for. Everything. The whole point of Revendreth is... Anyone in chat, what is the point of Revendreth? It's about redemption, yes, but it's about harvesting sin. It's about taking the sins upon oneself. It's literally the story of Jesus in the Bible. Upon the cross, he took the sins of humanity upon himself and died so as those sins would now forever be forgotten. This is the role of Revendreth within the system. It takes the sins of the denizens of Revendreth upon itself, and it allows them to atone. It's a balancing act. It's to ensure balance throughout the Shadowlands. It's one of the things that they talk about a lot, overcoming arrogance, overcoming greed. In other words, be balanced in all things. Which creature or character do we know of that is hyper obsessed with balance? Or at least as far as we can tell. Elune. Elune escaped when Zuval tried to steal. Well, Ian, yes, but Ian is a whole different entity. Ian's balance never works out. It's not the same as Elune's. So the problem with Elune, the biggest problem with the Revendreth storyline at the moment is that Elune stands out as the original master of Revendreth, and she escaped when Zuval turned on them. When Zuval started to question the purpose. Because here's another thing. Devos calls the purpose corrupt. She says to Carestia, in Spires of Ascension, we worship a corrupt purpose. She calls it corrupt. Those words most likely come from Zuval. He's the one who views this as a corrupt entity. To what end? I agree with you, Obo Steve. 100% agree with you. I do believe that the purpose is an actual entity. It's an actual being. I don't know where that being comes from or what that being is a part of, but I do believe that that being is called the purpose. That being is the one that sort of subverted or sort of made the Shadowlands to serve, if that makes sense. At least that's my belief, currently, as things stand. Why Elune would flee so far is another question entirely. I don't understand why she would flee as far as she did. Why she would feel that just going to a different place within the Shadowlands wasn't enough. Why, to her mind, she had to leave the Shadowlands in order to be safe. This I don't quite get. But it could also have something to do with the fact that she herself doesn't necessarily agree with what they did to Zuval. Right? That's entirely possible. That is entirely possible. That she herself does not agree with what was done to Zuval. And that is why she left. She didn't agree with what he did, but she also maybe thought that what they did to him was a little bit over the top, if you will. The whole Shadowlands just seems like it would be a terrible fate no matter where you end up. True. Tauren mythology says that Musha and Anshe were birthed at once. So, Venetia, the problem that I have currently with Anshe, with basically everything within the Tauren story, is it feels like it's sort of a copy of the Night Elf story. Just applying different sort of, shall we say, different sort of entities to it. Which could have been a cultural thing, because we have that in the past. If you look at, for example, you had the Greeks, and then the Greek gods were sort of just taken over by the Roman gods with changes happening here and there, right? So at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that there's, at this point, there is enough evidence to sort of try and figure out if the Tauren actually worship something different than what the Night Elves do. Because, to be fair, it feels as if Blizzard themselves have forgotten about the Tauren. The Shadowlands would have been the perfect time for the Tauren's history and sort of culture to be explored. And yet, it feels as if Blizzard just completely forgot that the Tauren even exist. I mean, they made Bane the leader of the fucking Tauren, the biggest crybaby in the history of World of Warcraft. I mean, this guy sits on the steps of Erebos and just cries, even though he was the first to be saved. He did fuck all until the goals arrived. Like, literally, worst role model ever for men anywhere is Bane. Thrall is a fucking close second, to be quite frank. Because the ladies are doing everything. I feel sorry for old Bolvar, because he's just being bullied by all the girls. But it's literally all the girls are doing everything, and the two guys there are just sat on the fucking stairs, just doing nothing. It's insane, right? It's literally just horrible. Horrible to watch. So yeah, I wish Blizzard would spend more time, because the Tauren story is extremely interesting. And I wish Blizzard would spend more time actually focusing on the Tauren story, if you will.